Hello, everyone, and welcome to True Encounters. I'm your host, Marvin Allen, and tonight I will be bringing you several new encounters. But first, I would like to say go and subscribe to my channel. Now, tonight I decided, to get on here and tell a few sightings because I promise you guys, but I'm still getting my channel up and running, but I'm a man of my word. So tonight I'm gonna give y'all a few of those encounters. Now, this first encounter comes out of Virginia, and the title of this is I Believe. And this guy name is Jake. So Jake said one night after leaving his friend's house, he started to head straight home. So as he's walking, he gets a call. It's his mother on the other line. So his mother asks him, "Are you still at your friend's house?" And Jake says, "No, I already left. I'm on my way home." So his mother said, "Okay, just be careful. Call me when you get in." So he hung up with his mother. So he continued to walk. Now, mind you, his friend don't live too far from him. So this is why he didn't drive. He just walked. So as he walking, he says that he can hear all the animals that he usually hear. So after about 15, 20 minutes, he said it started to get dead quiet. I mean, silent, like you couldn't hear nothing. So as he walking, he gets near his driveway. So he walks up in his driveway, and in the front of his yard, he says he has this big tree that sits out in front of his yard. Now, as he's going up to the driveway, he sees something over there standing by this tree. So as he looked over there, the first thing that drew him to this was the eyes. Now, the eyes, he said, was yellow. He said they was bright yellow. But he noticed something else about this thing. It was high up off the ground. So he noticed wasn't no local animal that be around there. So he's looking at this thing, and he noticed that these eyes is looking over at him. So he's still walking. He's going towards the house, towards the front of his door. So he says when he get about 5 feet from his door, he says he heard this low growl. And when he heard this low growl, he said that he could feel it. He could feel it throughout his body. Then he knew this wasn't a local animal. He said because when he heard this low growl, this scared the out of him. So he says he goes up to his door. Now, mind you, before he puts his key in to go in the door, he turns and look back. He said this thing, whatever it was, started to walk out from the tree. Said it took a few steps, came out from the tree. Now he said he could see this thing. He said this thing looked like a wolf. But the funny thing about this, that it was bipedal. It was standing up on 2 feet. So he turns back around, put his key in the door. He says he drops his key. Hurry up. Pick the key back up. Put the key in the door, turn it, goes in, shut the door. Now, he goes in his front room, pulls the curtain back a little bit. He looks out. He said this thing was still out there. Now, mind you, he's still trying to figure out what this thing is. So, as he's looking at this thing, this thing starts to walk towards his front. Now, when this thing is walking up, he shuts the curtain. He said this creature stood in front of his window. He stood in front of the window. He said, and the size of this thing didn't make no sense. He said this thing had to be about close to 8 feet tall, because that's how tall he said his window was. And he said he could see the top of his head and the ears that was sitting straight up on it. He said now through the curtain, he could see the silhouette of this thing. He said this thing had a long snout. He said this thing had arms, long arms that ended in hands with claws. He said after about a few minutes, this thing took one of those claws and it scraped it across the front of his glass. Made like a funny sound. So he thinking in his mind, should he call somebody? Should he call the police? But now he thinking, okay, if I call the police, these people might think I'm crazy. So he watching this creature. He's still watching this creature. So after about another minute or two, he said this creature walks over towards his front door. He said that's when he heard something turning the knob. He said this thing was turning the knob, actually trying to get in his house. Now he's really scared. He don't know what to do. So by the wall near the front door is a light. So he hits the light out front, lights everything up. He said when he lit everything up, he said this creature turned. It didn't run. He said this creature turned and it walked. He said it walked. He said at first it walked over and stood by this tree. The tree where he first saw this thing. He said it stood by this tree. He said this thing dropped down to all fours and then ran straight across the road over in the tree line. He said now he was still watching this thing out his front window. He's still watching this thing. He said this thing walks over in the tree line on all fours. So he said when this thing gets over there by the tree line on all fours, he said it just broke through the tree line, just crashing, breaking down trees and sticks and all this stuff. So that was his sighting, and that's why it's called, the title was it Believe, because now he know that these creatures are out there. Now, my next encounter comes out of the Carolinas. And like I tell you, I never use real people's names. So the name that I'm going to use for this encounter is Karen. So Karen said one night she was driving home, coming from the store. So she said as she was driving, she was listening to the music, had the music down real low. So she was listening to the music. And she said as she driving, she said that she had noticed something over by the tree as she was driving. Because mind you, she wasn't driving real fast. But she said she noticed something over by this tree. So she said she slowed down to a stop. So she said that she looked over by this tree. Now, when she looked over by this tree, she said she seen some orange-colored eyes. But the eyes wasn't real high off the ground, but she said they was high off the ground to be any kind of small animal that be around there. So she said she seen some orange-colored eyes. So she said she's sitting there, she contemplating, what is this thing? She said after a few minutes, she said this thing started to stand. And she watched that this thing stood up and watched those eyes get higher and higher. She said, and when this thing stood up, she said her mouth dropped. She said she was scared as hell. So she looking at this thing. She said this thing started to walk out. And it walked out bipedal to the middle of the road. So she said this thing gets to the middle of the road and it turned and it's facing her. Now, the lights is hitting this thing. She can see it. She said this thing looked like a giant dove standing up bipedal. She said this thing had shoulders, arms, pointed ears, a long snout. And she said it had the legs like a dove. They was bent back. And she said this thing did have a tail. Now she's scared. She don't know what to do. Now mind you, her car's just sitting there. But it's still running because it's in park. She said, but she watching this creature. She said after about a minute or two, this creature started to walk towards her. Now she puts her car in reverse. And she started to back up slow as this creature's walking towards her. So as she's going backwards, this creature is still coming towards her. She don't know what to do. She can't go but so fast because she got to keep her eye on this creature and on the road. She said, so as this creature's still coming towards her, she said that she started to beep her horn driving backwards. And I don't know. She said it must have did something to this creature. She said because this creature stopped. She said this creature stopped and she looked at this thing. Now, mind you, she still's going backwards. She's not that far from this creature. She said this creature stopped. She said, and when this creature stopped, it dropped down to all fours. And it ran back off over in the tree line through the woods. Now, mind you, when this lady told me this story, she was really emotional. She said because she never saw something like this in her life. And she never want to see nothing like this again. Y'all got to excuse me. But that was her encounter. And that encounter came out of the Carolinas. I got another encounter. And this one comes out of Virginia. This guy, name who I'm going to use is Scott. Now, Scott says that he's an average fisher. He like to go fishing all the time. So one day, he said he went to go fishing. He said, and as he got there and he started to fish, he said he noticed a strong odor, you know, like a urine odor. It just didn't smell right. Something he never smelled before. He said, because this thing was strong. He said it was so strong that it felt like it was burning his eyes. He said, so we smelled this strong odor and he was trying to, figure out where it was coming from because he smelled it, the urine, then it smelled it like wet dog, he said. So he trying to figure out what was it? Was it a dog around here pissing? But he thinking into this mind, this must have been a pack of dogs because he said it was real strong. So he says he throws it off and pays it no attention. So he said he goes and he started to fish. So as his reel is in, he trying to wait to see if he would get a bite. So he said after a few minutes, he had caught his first fish. So he said that he was reeling it in. He took it off the hook, put it in this little cooler thing. Then he put some more bait on and he threw it over back into the water. He said when he threw it over in the water, he said on the other side of the tree line, he heard a noise. Like a breaking noise, like something was like breaking a stick or something. He said he heard a noise. So he looks over there. He says he doesn't see anything. So he doesn't pay it attention, goes back to fishing. So he said after a few more minutes, he heard a noise again. So he looks back over there. Now, mind you, The first time he looked over there, he didn't see nothing. So he says when he looked over there this time, he said about 5 feet up in the tree line, said it's a lot of like a lot of debris and bush right there, like kind of tall weeds and stuff right there. He said, and when he looked over there in that direction, he said he seen some ears. Said he seen a set of ears sticking straight up. He said, but when he was looking at these ears, he noticed. He said these ears was twitching. So he's watching this. He said, and as he watching this thing started to walk to the left. Whatever it was, because it's down on all fours, because he only see the ears. Said this thing started to walk to the left. And as he walked to the left, the bushes that it was just behind, those bushes stopped. So this thing came out. Said this thing came out on all fours. He said this thing looked like a giant wolf. Said this thing was black. Said this thing was just black as night. Said so he watched this thing. He said as he watching this thing, he said this thing made this popping sound. And he said he watched this thing like he stretched his hind legs and it stood up bipedal. He said when this thing stood up, it walked out down towards where the water was. About 5 feet before he got to the water, he said this thing stopped. He said he dropped the reel. He started to walk down because down from where he was fishing at, it's a little path right there. Now, mind you, he said he can take this path because he took it before. He can walk up this path, and once he get up to this path, he said he can walk up this small embankment and get back up to the main trail. So he said as he's walking down to where this path at, he says he's still watching this thing. He said this thing started to walk in the same direction that he was walking. Like this thing was just mocking him. So he said as he's walking, this thing was walking. He said so as he got right there by where the path at, he said he turned and he looked at this creature. He said when he looked at this creature, he said this creature looked right back at him. He said he started to walk backwards towards where that trail was. He said, and when he started to walk backwards, he said this thing started to walk towards the water. He said this thing started to walk in the water. I mean, walking bipedal on 2 feet. He said he turned, ran through that little path, got up on the main trail, and he hauled tail. He said he ain't been back down there to fish since. Now, mind you, this is something he loved to do. He loved to go fishing. He said, but he ain't been back down there ever since. So that was his encounter. I got one more encounter for y'all. And this encounter comes out of South Carolina. And this was during the time when this lady went to go visit her grandmother. So, and the name that I'm going to use on here, because I don't use real people's name, this lady name I'm using is Wendy. So Wendy said that one weekend she went to go visit her grandmother. Now, mind you, in South Carolina, she said her grandmother had some land down there. You know, she have all type of animals down there. So that's why she loved to go down there and, you know, and see her grandmother. Now, mind you, during the time she went to go see her grandmother when she had this sighting, she was only 17 years old. So she says she's get down there, you know, to go visit her grandmother. She get there, goes in the house, say hi to grandma. Her grandmother say, no, don't rush outside. I'ma fix you something to eat. So she said her grandmother had made her, a little lunch, something to eat. So she ate. Then she told her grandmother she gonna go outside, and just walk around. So she said she leaves, go outside, and she walk around. She said now on their property, they got like they got one of these, grandmother has one of these old barns down there. Said it's kind of real old, so they keep, stuff in there like old tractors and old cars and stuff like that. So not too far from this barn, she said that her grandmother had a chicken coop, where she used to keep the chickens. So she said she walked over there by this chicken coop. And she said when she looked in the chicken coop, she noticed a lot of feathers, in the chicken coop. And she had said she had seen some dead chickens in there. So she runs back to the house. She tells her grandmother. Grandmother comes out. They go out. They look around. They trying to figure out, how this thing. So they walks around the back towards this, towards the around the back towards the chicken coop. So when they gets around the back where the chicken coop at, they notice that in the back, because the back is made out of wood, she said that this, whatever it was, tore the wood off and got in through the back of this chicken coop and must have, killed some animals and stuff. But now, grandma, she thinking, you would need what? Some type of hands to pull this wood off like this. So grandmother calls her son. Son comes over. He comes over. He look at it. So her son, he fixes it and everything. So the grandmother tell her daughter, she said, don't stay out late. Just, come in, before it get, too dark. And, you can eat and, get ready for tomorrow. So the granddaughter, she stays out there. And she walks around. She walks out in the field and stuff like that. She goes over there where the pigs was at, and she had a few goats and stuff like that. She said, but as she's walking, she said she looks further up, like straight, like going north. And she said she sees something running. She said she sees something running real fast. Said this thing was running real fast. She couldn't catch what it was. She said, but she did see some yellow eye shine of this thing as it was running. So she leaves, goes in the house. When she get in the house, she tells her mother, she tells her grandmother. She said, Grandma, I seen something running across the field before I came in that had yellow eyes. And her grandmother said, I don't know, maybe it's one of those coyote dogs or something that be out there. So she ate dinner, went upstairs. Now, the room that she stays in, she stay in the part where she can see a lot of the animals. So she says, as she's looking out this window, she's mainly watching the chicken coop because of what happened prior. So she says she's looking over by this chicken coop, and she says that she noticed some kind of animal walking down. Now this animal walking down is walking down on all fours. So she said as this animal walked, it was walking in the direction up to where this chicken coop was at. She said, and when this animal got right there by this chicken coop, she said it stopped. She said when it stopped, she said this thing held its head up. And she said this thing was just sniffing the air. She said she didn't know why. She said, but this thing started sniffing the air. Now, about 20, 30 feet from there, she said they had a dog. Grandmother had a dog out there. She said, and she could hear this dog, the dog started to bark. So she said when this dog started to bark, this thing, what she saw on all fours, this thing stood up. She said this thing stood up bipedal. It stood straight up, sniffed the air, and it looked in the direction to where the Doug house was at. She said she ran downstairs, got her grandmother. Grandmother came upstairs, went in the room, and she said, Grandma, look. They looked outside, and her grandmother said, what the is that? She said, Grandma, I don't know what it is. It looks like a werewolf. Look at it. She said, as they watching this thing, she said, this thing walked. She said, this thing is walking in the direction of the Doug house, where the Doug was. Now, mind you, you can't hear the Doug no more. The Doug ain't making no noise. The Doug quiet. You don't hear nothing. All you see is this creature walking. So as we watching this creature walk in the direction, as they watching this creature walk in the direction of the Doug house, you know, I asked her, I said, well, can you tell me what this thing looked like? She said, this is what I saw. She said, this thing looked like a werewolf. She said, this thing was jet black. She said, it had a snout. It had pointy ears. She said, it had long arms. She said, but up by the neck, it had like a lot of hair right there, she said, like a mane, like a lion would have. She said this thing had the bent back legs, just like a Doug would have, and it had a bushy tail. So she said this thing walking towards the Doug house. So when this thing walking towards the Doug house, she said they still watching this thing. She said this thing grabs the chain that this Doug was on, and he yanks it. He pulls it. This thing pulls it. Pulled the Doug out on the chain. He said this thing, they watched this thing break that chain off that Doug, grab this Doug by the neck, and they watched this thing kill the only Doug that her grandmother had left on her farm. Pulled this thing head completely off. When they seen that, you know, they lost it. They howling now. The grandmother like, I'm going to get my gun. She said when they made all that commotion, this thing looked over, up at the window, in their direction. It's like this thing knew the exact window they was in. She said, and this thing let out this noise. They said they would never forget, man. They said this thing let out a noise that they'll never forget. They said, and when that thing let out that noise, they jumped from that window, went downstairs in the front room. She called her son. Her son, hurry up over there. Because mind you, her son don't live too far from her. Her son hurry up and get over there. So when her son get there, you know, he comes in the house and, you know, they say, did you see anything out there? Did you see anything out there? He said, no, Ma, what's wrong? I don't hurry up over here because of all the commotion that you was making on the phone. So when she got there, she had her shotgun in her hand. And, you know, her son, you know, he's saying, what you doing with that? She said, son, I'm not crazy, but it was some kind of werewolf Doug thing out there, and it killed the Doug. He said it killed the Doug. And, you know, they said, yeah, it killed it. So they walked out there. That's when they saw the carnage. This thing, it ripped this Doug apart. The only Doug that this lady had left, this thing ripped it apart. So the son, he walks around, checking on all the other animals. At this time, this is the only thing that this creature killed, was this Doug. And when this girl was the story, it brought tears to her eyes. because she close to all the animals that stay on her grandmother's farm. So the son stayed there that night to make sure nothing else happened. So he was asking his asking his mom, the next day, what do you want to do? Do you want to call animal control? You want to call the police, the sheriff, or somebody? And the grandmother, she stuck to her old ways. She said, no, I don't want to call nobody. So her son leaves. Son leaves, go back home. So later on that day, the granddaughter, she goes back out again. And she, walks around the farm and checks on the animal. She definitely went over there to check on the chicken coop. She said nothing happened to the chickens or nothing like that. So she said as she's walking over there in the direction where they keep the two goats at, she said she could see up in the tree line. She said now when she looked up in the tree line, because she said this was probably about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She said she looks up in the tree line. She said she see that same black figure. It's daytime. She could see this thing. She said this thing was just jet black. She see this black figure standing up between two trees, bipedal on 2 feet. And this thing is looking in the direction of where she was standing at. She said when she saw this creature, she hauled back in the house. Told her grandmother. She said, Grandma, that thing is back again. Now, mind you, grandmother grabs the shotgun. They goes out. When they goes back out, though, and she take her over there to where she was at and where she pointed to see where that creature was standing at, this creature was gone. This creature was gone. It just left like it was never there. So her grandmother said, I'm going to have to do something because, I can't afford to keep losing animals like this. Even though it was just a dog, that still was her animal. So she said after they got back in the house, she said, she called the sheriff, because she said she know a lot of people in that town and she knew the sheriff and stuff like that. So he came out and she said she sat down and she said, before I tell you this, I don't want you to think that I'm crazy. So she said that she told him what she saw, and she said as she was telling the sheriff this, she said he had this look on his face like he wasn't even shocked. But this what really messed their head up. She said, the sheriff said, oh, we know about these things, but it ain't nothing that we could do. Trust me. I have gotten more than one call about these things. So the grandmother said that, so y'all know about these things and there's nothing y'all could do to stop them? Said, no, the government know they out here. But it's nothing we can do. You don't bother them, they won't bother you. And she was telling them, well, what about my animals? What about my livestock? She said, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you can get out here and get some brighter lights out, keep them on all night to try to keep them from coming near the animals and everything. You could do that. Or if something else happened, I can come out. I can call animal control, see if they can come out, set some traps up or something like that. But he said that I advise you to leave them alone and they just won't mess with you. So grandmother and the granddaughter getting irritated. So they said, okay, all right, whatever. You know what I mean? So the sheriff left. So this was that girl encounter. And, when I talked to her and she was telling me this, and then she had me on speakerphone And I got to talk to the grandmother too, you know, and it's crazy that law, that the law can know about these things and there's nothing that you could do. So those are some new encounters that I wanted to bring y'all, because I told y'all that I had some new ones. I got plenty more, but I just wanted to, to share those with y'all tonight. So, like I said, this is my new channel, go and subscribe, if you can, you like what you hear, and help support the channel. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring y'all some more encounters too. But I'm gonna upload these and put them out there and let y'all listen to that. But like I said, I'm still getting my channel together, so trust me, y'all gonna have some more new encounters and sightings. So, like I say, thank you and have a good night.